Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And Blizzard has announced more class tuning adjustments for March 31st, which is going to be the next reset. I kind of didn't anticipate a significant amount of changes here, so I'm very curious to see what is going to be coming with this update, given that they did the two major ones that they announced and talked about. But given the fact that Race to World First is actually concluded, maybe they don't need to care so much about, trying to balance around that. Now they obviously have MDI and AWC coming up, so that's probably likely where they're going to be aiming and targeting their priority balancing towards, I would imagine, as well, of course, the overall ladder. So if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. So they say here, as Mythic Raid and Mythic Dungeons have begun and the PvP season kicks off, we see some similar underperforming specs and a few clearly overperforming specs. So this is going to include likely some big nerfs and big buffs. This is what that sounds like to me. First things first, Frosty K's. The 4% guy is back, bro. It's a 4% rule. It comes to investing, it comes to class balance as well, but you're not going to be getting that in PvP, which is, I feel like, a little bit weird. I feel like Frosty K, it's still not really as good. My camera just crashed on me, guys. What just happened to my camera? What just happened to my camera, guys? We got to try and get it back real quick. Everybody, the universe is trying to troll me here. All right, we're back with the camera. I don't know what that was, but we're back. You can't nerf me, okay? I'll nerf myself. I actually wouldn't be totally against that 4% going in PvP, because I feel like Frosty K is still not measuring up to Unholy. So this is only for PvE that Frosty K will be getting 4% stronger. For Feral Druid, we see their damage increasing by 3%, but not in PvP. They are also buffing Frantic Frenzy, reducing it by 8%, but not in PvP. So our intention here is to improve Feral's damage in raids without increasing their damage in Mythic Plus, which is already competitive. So they want to buff their single target by increasing everything, and they're targeting their main AoE cooldown, which I don't think Feral Druids in PvP were really taking anyways, but you don't have to worry about it. It doesn't matter. They're not going to be nerfing it, so you're going to be totally fine there. For Beast Mastery Hunters, 4% guy comes in here for PvE and little tiny hunter buff, but not in PvP. Survival Hunters, you guys will get to keep your 4% buff, and I feel like you guys definitely needed something there, because I felt like Survival Hunter was starting to dip into irrelevancy there. So across the board, PvE and PvP, you'll get 4%. For Arcane Mages, Burden of Power now will increase Arcane Blast damage by 25%, up from 5%, and Arcane Pulse damage by 15%, up from 5%. So the developer's notes read that Arcane Sun Fury is a bit farther behind in our expectations in single target damage. I wonder if that's a sizable enough buff that Arcane Blast, spamming it at 4 stacks, in PvP, I wonder if that's enough to actually make that worth it. I feel like Arcane has not been able to do that in so long. Just be like a big Arcane Blast turret. It'd be fun if it could. So I'm curious to see how that one plays out. For Shadow Priest, quite a lot of notes here. Shadow Death has been lacking in damage, even in execute range. So we are significantly increasing its damage to correct this. That is really good in PvP. That's a lot of burst execute. Let's see exactly what's going on. But to increase damage in multi-target situations, we are targeting some AoE only sources and shifting some power from single target sources of damage to shadowy apparition damage. So you're going to get more AoE and more execute power. Shadow Death is getting an 80% buff, but Mind Blast and Void Blast are getting a 10% nerf. I'm not a big fan of that. I feel like you don't use, at least in PvP, right? You don't use Death really enough to use Mind Blast quite a lot more. Shadowy Apparitions and Void Apparitions are going to do 35% more damage. So Apparition has been a roller coaster for Shadow Priest, guys. It was bugged. It was really high, a lot of damage. It took the bug away. It got really nerfed, and now it's getting buffed back up. Spectral Horrors now increases shadowy apparition damage against targets affected by your Shadow Word Madness by only 30%, though, down from 50%. So it's just more AoE, but not single target towards the burst class. So honestly, your burst is actually going down a bit here, except in execute range. Psychic Link will now cause direct damage spells to inflict 25% of their damage on all targets affected by Vampiric Touch, up from 20%. So yeah, more AoE. Void Spike from Things from Beyond now deal 25% additional damage to secondary targets. Mind Seer and Void Lashers are also going to deal 25% additional damage. So honestly, I feel like it really depends on what your breakdown is on apparitions, at least in PvP. In PvE, this is going to be pretty big, just like passive AoE damage, I think, which is nice. But in PvP, that passive AoE damage is generally not that valuable. So losing this Mind Blast, Void Blast damage might be pretty significant, but it's a lot on apparitions. So maybe it all balances out, and then you've got this finishing power now. to try out on Shadow Word Death. I'm just curious if 80% is enough, because sometimes the spells do such little damage that even an 80% change doesn't swing it tremendously. For Arms Warriors, their developers' notes read that Arms single target damage remains lower than intended, particularly Execute. So they're going to be buffing your Execute by 20%, but not in PvP. And they're going to be buffing your Overpower by 10%, but not in PvP. So Arms Warrior damage in PvP has actually been really good. I think the output is looking a lot better for it. I think for it right now, it's mobility issues and maybe some survivability issues if you're not playing Colossus, if you're playing Slayer or something like that. But in PvE, you guys are really low, so this is very nice for you in PvE situations. PvP now, we actually see Marksmanship Hunter included here. You guys were getting dodging nerfs for so long, I swear. Marksmanship Burst is an outlier, so we're reducing the power of aim shot, increasing sustained damage from other primary sources to keep it feeling powerful while reducing its peak burst. I really wish they targeted True Shot and Volley, though. I don't think it was like every aimed shot. It was particularly the Volley ones that are instant and the True Shot ones. I feel like nerfing aim shot across the board makes the cooldown makes the cooldown more identifiably important. Kill shot and black arrow damage has been increased by 15% though, and rapid fire got buffed by 15%. So your rapid fire will feel good outside of cooldowns and probably even stronger in cooldowns. They didn't really nerf the cooldown window here. I kind of think that rapid fire might just replace aim shot in the cooldown window, and you're just going to be going and just mowing. I don't know if the problem here has been solved being a burst outlier with this. I would have really liked to see volley aim shots targeted in some manner, the modifiers associated with that interaction, and true shot modifiers. Because I feel like the buff here, like, you guys might be even scarier, to be honest. I feel like you guys might be even scarier after that. For Restoration Druids, a substantial buff is needed. Oh my god, they're acknowledging it. Resto Druids who have been struggling to keep up in healing output as well as defensively. You're getting an 8% healing buff. And they buffed regrowth by 40%. I don't know how many times I played Resto Druid and I did my Nature Swiftness regrowth and watched it move someone's health 3%. I know we wanted to move away from the like ping-ponging health bars where you like heal somebody instantly, which is fine, but like 3% of their health is pretty low. So this is rewinding a lot of the nerfs that came into Resto Druid for Mythic Plus. They're also buffing Swiftmen by 25%. And Barkskin is going to be stronger, I assume for Resto Druid only, up to 30% damage mitigation on this. So hopefully you're not going to just be randomly flopping like a little fish a lot of the times. This is pretty sizable. I think this is targeting the main recovery mechanics, just buffing everything overall. And it kind of depends what they do to Mistweaver, but this seems very nice. For Arcane Mage, Arcanosphere damage. We're going to... Arcanosphere? I'm scared, man. It's fallen behind. Maybe it just is that bad. I don't know. Maybe it is just that bad and it needs this, but Arcanosphere is one of those abilities that just completely KOs people. So that's why when I read that, I'm kind of freaking out a bit. We're also buffing Sun Fury in gameplay above to make it more competitive. So like an Arcane Blast spamming Arcanosphere mage, maybe, where you're like a Chaos Bolt mage. Might be good. Again, 250% seems like a lot. I feel like that's a number that either it's going to put it way over the top and it's going to be the most broken thing that gets nerfed next week, or it's not enough because it was just doing such pathetically low damage to begin with. I feel like this is one of the situations that I feel like that's going to be either very volatile in either direction. For Mage here, Fire Mage has strong burst during combustion, which has gotten a bit too strong. We're aiming to reduce power in this window by adjusting talents that are propping up damage during combustion and otherwise are looking to keep sustained damage in a similar state. I think it's a good, that's why I wish was set up here with True Shot and Volley with Marksmanship, because that is right on the money. Each stack of Fired Up will now increase fire damage by 2%, down from 4. Burn It All now increases spell damage by 5% during the combustion window, down from 10. So not totally gutting it. I mean, the scaling here might be quite significant on top of this, but I don't think that's totally gutting the combustion window. Although the damage outside of combust, they're not compensating it. Like, this is one of the things, right? Like, readjusting the cooldown down and then buffing every ability outside of it. This is the right direction for adjusting the cooldown damage, which is good. And with the Arcane, I mean, it's funny, Arcane might just be the one that comes out one-shotting instead of Fire after that, but this is, I think this is a good direction for it. But it might be dangerous as far as, like, irrelevancy outside of the window, though. Mistweaver Monk. Mistweavers have continued to be a step above healers this season with strong sustained healing in addition to having strong cooldowns more frequently than other healers. These adjustments target some of those cooldowns. They're nerfing all healing. I don't know why this isn't an asterisk, but by 4%. Conduit of the Celestials, Heart of the Jade Serpent now causes Thunder Focus Tea to increase the recovery rate of Renewing Mist, Rising Sun Kick, Life Cocoon, and Thunder Focus Tea by 30%, down from 75%. So you're not going to be getting those like sub-minute Life Cocoons. Those are really strong. Conduit of the Celestials, Conduit Healing reduced by 50% in PvP combat as well. So a lot of like the big cooldown reduction. I think this is good. This seems really good. Didn't completely cut the head off with only 4%. I think the cooldown recovery rate was just really high right there. So that seems good. I think this seems good for Monk. And then with the Druid buffs, I feel like this is good so far. This is what the healer balance really needed if we were gonna keep the retention of players long term. Windwalker Monk. We feel that Windwalker's burst windows are too difficult to react to, so we're reducing the damage of Zenith Stomp and Rushing Wind Kick, while adding some damage to Fists of Fury, which has felt less impactful this season. Additionally, it's not uncommon to die through Touch of Karma, so we are increasing the amount of damage it absorbs to increase its effectiveness as a survival tool. So they're nerfing Rising Sun Kick by 5%, they're nerfing Rushing Wind Kick by 10%. Again, I feel like Windwalker was another class where it's like Zenith, right? During the Zenith window, like with Hunters, right? The damage on Marksman and Windwalkers during the Zenith window, these abilities hit too hard. If you nerf them baseline, which includes the window, but baseline means they're also weaker like outside of it. Whereas this, like buffing Fists of Fury, now it means Zenith Fists of Fury is basically maybe just replacing these abilities as far as priority, and it's still going to be scary burst damage. I like the buff to Touch of Karma. It definitely felt weak, but that might also be attributed to the fact that a lot of classes' cooldowns are so powerful that they just cut through it. And, if you nerf all the cooldowns, then maybe Karma's at an appropriate level. If the game is going to stay as it is, then this makes sense to me. I'm just a bit worried with this being the baseline abilities that Zenith is still going to be a scary cooldown, and then you're just ending up like Fire Mage, or the cooldown is the only thing that's important with that type of change. For Paladin, we are looking to reduce burst damage to targets at low health for all Paladin specs, which is mainly caused by Vengeful Wrath. Additionally, Blessing of Spell Warding has been a powerful spell since it was introduced with few counters and works against most specializations, which can feel oppressive to play against. We are reducing its duration in PvP so that it can remain a powerful defensive. We are reducing it remain a powerful defensive. What's going on with this? Vengeful Wrath now increases Hammer of Wrath damage by 20% of the target's health, down from 50. Okay, so Judgment, and yeah, this was on Prot too when I was playing Prot Paladin. So the Hammer of Wrath window is just absolutely slapping, but like that's pretty big. This is for everything, for Ret, Prot, and Holy. That's pretty big. Like that's a pretty big window that is gone now. And Spell Warding is only going to last 6 seconds. Which I think that's more fair for what it is. I think that's fine. For Holy Paladin, developer notes, after recent tuning and the general Paladin changes, Holy is in a good spot. This increase of power of a major resource of healing from Herald of the Sun should shore up the viability of the hero tree. So also buffing Eternal Flame. I think that's good. Do a quick little hero talent readjustment. I do think that this is still, for Holy, maybe the Hammer of Wrath are hitting too hard, so this is fine. This is a nice buff, though, to Eternal Flame. And then for Prot, they're nerfing all your damage. The tank specs are not going completely unscathed here. So that Vengeful Wrath nerf on top of that for Prot, that was like the main lethal point of Prot. So Prot's offense might be dead. Maybe. I don't know. Somehow these tanks keep creeping back up despite like how much Blizzard punches them down. So maybe it's not enough, but it was definitely doing a lot of damage. So I think that's fine. For Ret Paladins, we are looking to add more punch to finishers from Ret, which have felt quite weak this season. So we are increasing the damage of Final Verdict to achieve that. We're also increasing the damage of Dawnlight to increase the viability of Herald of the Sun. So they're buffing Templar's Verdict and Final Verdict by 25%, and they're buffing Light of the Dawn, or Dawnlight, by 30%. You still have, they didn't nerf the Divine Toll spinning hammers. They nerfed your Hammer of Wrath execute, but the spinning hammers are still there. I feel like the spinning hammers plus this is, you're probably fine. You probably walk away from this exactly where you were before, I feel like, as Ret. Except maybe you do a bit more damage outside of wings, because this is restricted to wings. which is that's the right direction, right? I think for a lot of these classes that are doing the big one shots, so that's probably good. For Subtlety Rogue, Subtlety is, oh my god, Subtlety Rogue is actually included, has been a strong asset to a team with its frequent burst and strong crowd control. We are bringing down some of its potential burst with these changes to keep their power level more in line to their overall kit. So death perception effects will now increase their finisher damage by 3%, down from 5%, and replicating shadow bonus damage for shadow clones got reduced to 5%, down from 15%. So a lot less damage. So they're still going to stun you a lot, but they're going to be doing a lot less pop. They're not just going to KO. They're likely not going to just KO you by themselves. And then obviously if you think about like tournament level play, they're going to be playing a lot with fire mages, right? So that synergy there is going to be, I think, significantly lower. That seems appropriate. Might be a little bit high. It's one of those things where it's like, do you go after the damage and just leave the fact that they can stun everybody seemingly every 16 seconds? I guess you do if you want to run this like 16-second diminishing return, like test to see how good crowd control feels with that change. I guess this is what you do have to do, is go after their damage, which does increase likely viability for assassination or for outlaw, right? Because then those guys can be the specs that do more damage. If they can't stun as much as sub, they can do more damage than sub and have like a niche place, hopefully. For Shaman, we are increasing the damage of some Shaman PvP talents that have fallen behind other sources of damage. We would like Lightning Lasso to feel worth fully channeling and trying to interrupt, for Electrocute to be a noticeable effect when purging. So Lightning Lasso got a 450 buff. That's good. That is a scary, like, again, when I see a number like that, I'm like, what the? That seems very scary. Electrocute is also getting a 35% damage buff. So, Purge is pretty effective right now. Not, funnily enough, not against Druid, because they have the Purge protection that got buffed a lot. But maybe this will counter that Purge protection, the extra damage on this. Because I remember in Legion was when Electrocute was introduced, and it completely counter Resto Tree. You just ran at them, purging it, and then they just got zapped, basically. The only unfortunate side of this is that Shaman PP talents are like very high priority. It's tough to like swap them because they're such strong effects. So like, I mean, maybe this is making these options actually competitive with those strong effects, possibly. We'll have to kind of see, but I do feel like a lot of the other PP talents are very strong options. So like these have to be really good in order to compete against them. And maybe these numbers are enough for that. Elemental Shaman, all ancestor healing is increased. Healing? That's gotta be a typo, right? I feel like that's gotta be a typo. Healing? I'm gonna have to look at my damage breakdown to know if ancestors heal as Ellie. I feel like they don't. Or was this meant to be down maybe with the Resto Shaman one? I feel like this is either a typo or ancestors do heal, and I've just never thought it was that significant. Maybe this is a minor increase to that. I want to assume this is supposed to say damage. So Farseer, like little ancestor damage is higher, but I don't really know what to see. Enhancement Shaman, we feel enhancement is in a good place after last week's tuning. Enhancement has outlier burst potential with Tempest, so you're toning that down so that it's easier to react to the burst. So Tempest is getting a 15% nerf. It's probably fair for how much, I've been playing Stormbringer a lot. It's still probably going to be decent there. Although they're not looking at like the Ascendance Doomwind's window where, you feel like completely crazy during the cooldowns versus not. This is kind of just toning down one element of the one-shotting. Not going to really do like a huge shift. Although Enhance is one of those specs where you kind of expect it to be more bursty, right? Like it's just historically always been like that. So maybe it's probably okay. For Restoration Shaman, we're targeting a buff to Farseer this week. Its healing has fallen behind, and we're aiming to increase its viability compared to Totemic. So they're buffing all the ancestor healing by 20%. I feel like this has to be just a typo. Like this is meant to be here or something. Farseer Elemental Reverb now increases Riptide by 25% in PvP, up from 10. So Monk's getting pretty significantly shaved off. Holy Paladin Burst is getting shaved down a bit. Disc Priest has not been touched though at all. So Disc Priest is probably still going to be in a really good spot. But Resto Druid's coming up a lot. Resto Shaman's probably coming up a lot. With this, 15% Riptide is a lot. And then the extra Ancestor proc is quite a bit too. For Warriors, what are we doing for Warriors? arms can sometimes struggle to connect, so we are making a change to battle stance to help with mobility against slow and root effects. Additionally, we are increasing the power of ignore pain so that it feels more worthwhile to use. Oh my god, warrior might just be taking over right now. So battle stance will reduce the duration of movement impaired effects by 25% up from 10, and ignore pain will absorb 20% more damage in PvP. So this is the type of change, like with how much damage they do, this on top of that, that might be pretty juicy. That might be pretty juicy. For Fury Warrior, damage is in a good state for Mountain Thane, but there is some potential for burst from Bloodthirst that we're looking to rein in. We are also increasing the damage from Execute to increase the viability of Slayer hero talents. So Execute will get a 20% buff in PvP, and Burst of Power, though, will only increase the damage of Bloodthirst by 15% down from 35. So Fury clipping a little bit of a nerf here. That's definitely, this will even Arms and Fury out against each other, I think, a lot. And then Subtlety Rogue coming down. Windwalker, Windwalker, I'm a bit uncertain because I didn't target the Zenith window, and I feel like Fist is probably just going to replace just this damage during the cooldown. I like Fist might just become the most terrifying thing, maybe. Overall, though, I think this is going to be interesting. I think the big one was the healers. I think that the healers are done well here. Because that's what we needed, the healer balance to come more in line. Like when you queue up, if you're casual and you just only want to play a Resto Shaman, you're fighting Monk every game, it feels like there's no chance, you're just inevitably going to quit the game, right? So I feel like the tuning here to healers is really good. The DPS is probably, some of it seems really good, and some of it seems like it could be really volatile, which maybe is good for trying to mix things up as far as viability. So I'm very interested to see how these play out. I think the healer one is the one that I'm most excited to see play out. But that's it here for this update. Thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown, and I will see you in the next one.